And welcome everybody to the Daily Space Weather. We've got another large sunspot rising, solar flares and coronal mass ejections to talk about. By the way, I'm your host Dan, aka smAsho. Looking at the sun here in colorized magnetogram at 171 angstroms, ionized iron from the Solar Dynamics Observatory. Here's your new sunspot group. Sunspot 2841 has remained stable. It is a beta class sunspot. The likelihood of solar flares is still a little bit higher than it would be without sunspots. This one up here is quite big. We'll get into some details of that shortly. You can actually see some filaments moving around here as well at the beginning of this video, right up here. Attract your attention to that portion. And we don't believe any of those ejected. Those either splashed back down or remained suspended in the corona. This is ionized helium, by the way, for you new viewers, 304 angstroms, also from the Solar Dynamics Observatory. So here's the intensity gram. And we'll zoom in a bit here so you can see sunspot 2841. Not a lot of activity from it. Again, it is beta class. It does have two opposite polarity umbrae at least. And up here in the northeast, there is a sunspot up there, believe it or not. You may not be able to see it in this imagery. When we show you the high-res imagery at the end, you'll definitely be able to see it. It'll be sunspot 2842. Again, this is 2841. 2842 has just risen in the northeast. Here's a diagram of where stuff is located in the solar system. And we'll advance this 1 week. We hope you got great sleep during new moon. It's one of the reasons why we like it. The 10.7 centimeter radio flux has come up to 74 solar flux units, I think, as we're seeing a disparity in NOAA's report and the Space Weather Enthusiast dashboard. 73 or 74 is the current radio flux. Here's the 1 year chart. And at solon.info/solar, you can find this chart. The black line is the radio flux. And it looks like it has come up from 73 to 74. So there it is, reported on the Space Weather Enthusiast dashboard at 74 solar flux units. And for you new viewers, a solar flux unit is 10,000 joules. NOAA is also forecasting a geomagnetic period of unrest in 2 days. On Monday, July 12th, between 3 and 6 Universal Time, NOAA forecasting a geomagnetic unrest period, a KP4 event. Probably from a coronal hole wind stream, but it's looking like an awfully wishy-washy forecast there. Moving on to check out global seismicity. A massive earthquake drought has been occurring over the past 90 days. And when you're looking at a chart of data, you need to look at the peaks as well as the valleys. And we're seeing a huge valley. Only one 7 magnitude quake in the past 90 days. Let's check out the list from USGS of the past 24 hours worth of quakes. We've got an extremely shallow quake here in Nevada, measured at 2,100 meters above sea level, not far from the 6 magnitude quake that we saw. It's actually showing that it's in California here, not in Nevada, for some reason. So that one is believed to be from over 2,000 meters above sea level. Let's go back to the list. Also, we saw this 4.5 magnitude at a very northerly location in between Svalbard and Greenland. So very close to the North Geographic Pole. Here's another extremely shallow quake in Markleeville, California as well. That one nearly 2,000 meters above sea level, estimated depth. And continuing on, there was a 5 magnitude at Tonga, the deep quake capital of the world, although that quake occurring near the surface. Papua New Guinea also saw a 5.1. And we've got a ton of quakes on the list here because of the recent activity in California. Also, there's one here, it looks like Papua New Guinea. We'll get to it. It's a 4.6. Here's a 4.6 at Wallace and Futuna. So that one's at extreme depth, 433 kilometers. Here's a 5.6 in Indonesia, which looks like a foreshock, perhaps. As we saw a larger quake there, Peru also saw a 5.0 magnitude quake, so a little bit of an uptick here in seismicity the past 2 days. And we've got a lot of aftershocks here in California, so we've got to speed up the list. 5.0 at Fiji. That was at over 111 kilometers estimated depth. Japan saw 5.3, so a little bit of a seismic uptick here, folks. It's a lengthy list. Argentina saw a deep quake at a 4.5 magnitude at over 250 kilometers estimated depth. And here's the largest quake of the past 24, another 6 magnitude. So Indonesia seeing a 6.1 there, and a bunch of aftershocks like a 5.5 and a 5.0. Quite close to the same location there. Tajikistan saw a 5.8 as well. Probably did some damage, as the buildings in Tajikistan are probably not built to like Japan's standards, for example. Indonesia saw 5.4. So quite an uptick here in seismicity in the past 2 days. Keep in mind, any of those quakes could be foreshocks. And there, once again, is that 90-day chart showing the massive 7 magnitude earthquake drought. Volcanoes be erupting too. Let's see which ones. Mount Abico has been producing a 10,000-foot ash plume over Paramushir Island. Suwanosejima, back on the list today, 9,000-foot ash plume above it as it explodes. Mount Ibu, 7,000-foot ash plume there. Sangay in Ecuador exploding. 20,000-foot ash plume produced from that. Revenador, 14,000-foot ash plume as it explodes. And Sabancaya, sporadic puff emissions and explosive activity have produced a 24,000-foot plume of volcanic ash. Please don't pole vault the caldera. This public service message brought to you by smAsho.com. Pick up some merch, become a patron, check out our forum, etc. at smAsho.com. And don't forget to press like and subscribe on YouTube. Tell your friends, foes, science noobs, and science pros about the channel. We've got lots of stuff to do, and we need your assistance getting the videos out there. Let's take a look at some solar photons. The GOES X-ray flux has been dropping down here over the past 24 hours. Check it out. It's a downward slope. It's a downward trend, folks. A reduction in X-ray activity. Once again, there is a large sunspot rising in the northeast, so this will rise. And we could see large flares coming with basically no warning. We did see a small little signal here in the proton flux as well, as if one of those C-class flares may have produced some solar protons that made it down to the GOES 16. Tiny little signal there in the proton flux, not what I would call a proton event. GOES magnetometer is looking pretty spiky here in the past couple days, and there is a coronal hole wind stream on the way. We can expect to see some effects from that in about 2 or 3 days. And let's take a look at the current sheet. Earth is solidly in a south pole current sheet shown here in red. And we can expect to remain there for the foreseeable future. Keep in mind the magnetic environment can change with no warning. This data is 1 hour and 48 minutes old. It's the top view ecliptic plane field plot. And here's basically the same data from a line of sight perspective, showing you the 3-dimensional view of the heliospheric current sheet here. North pole oriented shown in green, south pole oriented shown in red. Here's the coronal hole line of sight plot. And those red areas in the southern hemisphere, those are large, well-defined coronal holes, which are blasting out some solar protons from the sun's intercalate regions. We won't talk about intercalate regions in today's video, but in the future, we will certainly have to bring that up. And here's some more imagery since we did see a coronal mass ejection. Here on the right pane, you can see from Lagrangian point 1, LASCO C2 here, the LASCO SOHO coronagraph. And you can see a little bit of ejecta there, expected to entirely miss the Earth to the west. Great view of that little coronal mass ejection. Also, you can see the coronal holes here. They're looking like they're a little bit polarity confused. It's showing north and south pole coronal hole polarity here, the red and green. I mean the red and blue. And you can see some confusion regarding polarity up here as well. Anyway, here's the view from Lagrangian point 5, the stereo A coronagraph, and you can see that coronal mass ejection propagating there as well. Again, there's the LASCO C2. And there is the stereo A coronagraph. Continuing on to look at global geomagnetism. We did see the KP index make it up to 3. Now it's back down to 1. Geomagnetic calm conditions. The KP index is a global geomagnetic measurement. Next, real-time solar wind. And we just saw a coronal hole wind stream-like strike here. As we saw the density drop down and the velocity come up at the same time, it looks a bit like a coronal hole wind stream to me, but a very weak one, as the density only made it up to about 22 protons per cubic centimeter. Anyway, current conditions are 368 kilometers per second for the solar wind velocity, solar wind speed 6.53 protons per cubic centimeter. We also saw a signal with the plasma temperature here. The plasma temperature came up at the same time that the density came down and the velocity went up. Looks like the signature of a coronal hole wind stream to me. What say you? Leave us a comment. Let us know what you think. Here's the magnetohydrodynamic pressure around planet Earth for the last 4 hours. It's our Geospace Magnetosphere movie for you new viewers. We show it daily. It's the space weather modeling framework. And if you want to read about where the data is derived, how the model's generated, go to the Geospace Magnetosphere movies page, click on details. You'll find a link to the space weather modeling framework. Anyway, fairly homogeneous pressure here and consistent over the past 4 hours. Next, ground magnetic perturbations. We do see some pulses coming out of the Pacific Ocean. If you look around this area, you'll see some mild geomagnetic pulses coming out of the South Pacific. Nothing to write home about. We also see magnetic perturbations around the South Geomagnetic Pole, the Canadian North Geomagnetic Pole, and less so the Siberian North Geomagnetic Pole. Yes, there are two, and we are living through a polar excursion. That's why we show the data daily. Now, we regularly do stream live to Twitch. You may want to check out the mobile app there, twitch.tv/smAsho. It will actually send you notifications whenever we go live. And we actually did today's meteorology segment live. If you haven't checked out our meteorology segments, check out our playlists at youtube.com/smAshomash/playlists. Twitch.tv/smAshomash is the URL. Twitch.tv/smAshomash. Thanks to our YouTube subscribers, our new subscribers, etc. Please don't forget to press like and subscribe. Please share the content on your social media accounts. Let us know in the comments what your favorites are. Check out smAshomash.com and check out our social media. There are all kinds of links to stuff you may not be aware of at smAshomash.com. We're also on BitChute. We've just exceeded 500 subscribers. We'll be making a BitChute exclusive to celebrate that. Here's our homepage, smAshomash.org. We'll redirect you here to smAshomash.com. There are those social media links we talked about, our Discord channel, etc. Links to the twitch.tv/smAshomash site. Today's featured product is available by clicking on the smAsho store link. If you click the smAsho store link, you'll be able to find this, the Mansa shirt. Mine is in purple. And what it means is, make America not suck again. If you noticed, America's been sucking since the year 2020. And it's up to you to make America not suck again, not the government. And that's why we're featuring today's featured product. It's up to you to make America not suck again. So pick up some merch and tell your friends and foes about it. It's completely nonpartisan. It's not in support of Trump or Biden or anybody else. It's in support of actual humans, since it's up to you to make America not suck again, not the government. Today's cosmology segment will have to be a separate video entirely, and we may or may not make one. It's up to you to follow us to figure out whether we do. And make sure you check out youtube.com/smAshomash/videos. In case you're wondering if we've put out a video, I know it's possible that you may not have received notifications on YouTube. Who would have ever guessed? Let's get back to some current space weather data. Electrons can charge up satellites. We don't see any of that going on right now, at least according to the Space Weather Prediction Center. No charging hazards currently. Here's the one-year chart of the relativistic electrons surrounding planet Earth. That's from solon.info. Here's a 3-day chart. And we're seeing low to moderate levels here. And if it indeed is an ongoing coronal hole wind stream, folks, we can expect to see low levels and chaotic electron belts. Here's the forecast. And you can see NOAA is forecasting flat levels here of electron flux over the next couple of days. The green boxes are the forecast. The yellow diamonds are the observation. There's a diagram of the Van Allen belt. If you need to look at that, feel free to pause the video. Distances are shown in miles. Here is the total electron content. You're looking at electron density on a global scale for the entire air column. Geosynchronous GPS satellites are at a very high altitude, tens of thousands of miles, and they've got to communicate through a lot of electrons. When they do so, if there are a lot of electrons there, it will cause massive GPS errors, and that's where they're most likely to be occurring, where you see the closest to red. Here's another diagram of the atmosphere to show you where the F ionosphere layer is located. That red F at about 300 kilometers is what we're looking at now, one slice of the atmosphere. It's in many ways, the bridge between space and Earth. There's a lot of vibration going on up there, and a lot of chemical reactions, and a lot of ions. That's why it's called the ionosphere. There are a lot of charged particles up there, a lot more than down here on the surface of the Earth, where there's a lot of stuff to react with, which makes more neutral particles. Anyway, ionosphere looking fairly normal here. Nothing to really write home about. Let's bring up the latest image from 9:15 Universal Time. And a little teaser, don't forget to check out our meteorology segments and our other features at youtube.com/smashamash/playlists. We do a lot more than the daily space weather. And here come bonus features. It's the ground-based solar observatory at El Teide, Spain. And we still see some activity happening up here in the northwestern limb. You can see some filamentary behavior and some filamentary behavior over here in the northeastern limb as well. As, again, there is a large sunspot having risen there. We see filaments down here. Sunspot 2841 looking quite stable here from the perspective of El Teide, Spain. Part of the National Sunspot Observatory, by the way. Today's stargazing was brought to you in part by our patrons. Please consider becoming a patron at patreon.com/smashamash. We roll back the benefits received from our patrons into creating more consistent and better quality content. So consider funding us at patreon.com/smashamash so we can reach this year's goals. Check out our mission at smashamash.com/forum/mission if you want to read about what we're doing over here. And don't forget to visit our links. Thanks again, patrons. Next, our GOES 16 SUVI thematic map. And check out this large. You can actually see some of the filamentary behavior going on around this new sunspot 2842. I have a feeling it's going to be a significant one. Also, there's a minor crown prominence you can see up here around the North Polar region. Another indication that the sun is ramping up its activity, as crown prominences are indeed associated with solar maximum. So we've got a couple years yet to reach solar maximum. It should be a wild ride, especially considering how low solar activity's been. Here's the latest intensity gram, and we're going to show you this new sunspot. There it is. It's 2842. It'll most assuredly get a name. It's looking big. It's too big to evaporate quickly enough to not get named. There's 2841. Again, looking stable here over the past 24. Let's check the polarities. I think it's beta class. It's really hard to say based on this data. It looks to me like this is a North Pole umbra, and this is a South Pole. That would be my guess based on the magnetogram here. but it's pretty tough to see. And we only see one polarity associated with 2842. So we'll be keeping an eye on that. And when I say eye on, the pun is intentional. And here's some additional imagery of the closest star. It's El Sol in 131 angstroms, ionized iron from the Solar Dynamics Observatory. To see some C-class solar flares, so you should see 3 C-class solar flares up here in the northwestern limb, and we'll actually zoom in on that to close out the video. Some fantastic imagery there from the Solar Dynamics Observatory. Thanks for tuning into the Daily Space Weather, and may that solar wind be at your back.